voting in who is going to be tabling, because there have been a lot of requests from local organizations wanting to be present.
Good.
No one is shied away. It's just we have limited amounts of tables, and
Sure.
we have a purpose for this. In the center of where we're going to be in Pierce Lawn at Canal Side. We're going to have a rally space. So the idea for this at first was to have a march to push Buffalo's green development zone. But after, talking to national organizers about this event, figured that we could make this so much bigger and include a lot of the greater Buffalo community. And so we decided on Canal Side, which is a public use district, if you want to say. And the reality is that Canal Side, we've seen it redeveloped. You probably know more than I, because I've only been here 5 years. But we've seen it redeveloped. Hundreds of millions of dollars went into that, but the reality is that that's adding to the gentrification that we see in the city of Buffalo. It's really become a hub for just the elite. And so really trying to create that diverse culture within Buffalo, because this is a hub for refugees and immigrants, and a lot of different people coming from different places. So why not that be reflected in Buffalo and in an event like this?
So when you think about climate justice, a lot of people's minds might go to an island in the Pacific that's going underwater, or a big city on the coast of Florida or New York City that's getting battered by hurricanes and flooded. What does climate justice mean for you in Buffalo? How are we experiencing climate injustice today, and what might climate justice look like for us in the future if we can obtain it?
Yeah. So number one thing I would say is that whenever I hear climate justice, I envision what is possible. So climate justice is our vision, is the goal. And the reality is we live in climate injustice, like you cited. So when I think of climate injustice here locally in Buffalo, I think of all the asthma rates that are predominantly in the west side where I live now, and I've gone through respiratory issues. I think about the miscarriages in North Tonawanda. I think about the post-industrial life that Buffalo has experienced way before my time. I think about the waterways, how the Buffalo sewer contaminates our water every time it rains, a heavy flow, and how nobody's really doing anything about it. I saw a report the other day while I was doing research for this event that last year's water test report, it said that our water is completely fine, very drinkable, very in good shape. And then when I think of all the times that I've talked to people and talked about water, it's always my water tastes disgusting. I have to have a Brita water filter on my faucet. So it's not really reflected in the life experiences of people. I even think about all the people that I've met that have had cancer, all the people that, why is that? I read an article the other day that said Buffalo has 6 most common cancers, and we have the highest rates here in Buffalo than anywhere else in the United States for these 6 cancers. So I think of the pollution that's all in the air, how we aren't able to grow our own food in the soil because soil contamination. If anything, we need raised beds. And these are all things, honestly, that I never thought about. I grew up in the Bronx, and it was never something that was brought up to me, or that education was never there for me.
So the extent of the pollution and its impacts on people's health, and the way that it's the worst levels of pollution are where people low income and people of color are living, whether it's in Buffalo or in the Bronx. How about climate justice? So what's the sort of positive vision that you are drawn to?
I got a smile on my face.
What does it look like in Buffalo as opposed to other places?
It looks like people actually having jobs that are here in their communities, people no longer having to travel 2-3 hours to get for a 1-2 hour shift that's not paying them enough. It looks like job security. It looks like education equality, higher standards for education. It looks like housing equality, a mix of economies, but in a good way, not in a gentrifying way. It looks like healthcare for all. It looks like green space for children to play and to learn and to live and to love in their communities. It looks like way less people being sick because of their environment and not really knowing or being able to attribute that to their environment.
So you're bringing in a lot of aspects of life. Not all of them would be obviously related to climate or to the environment to people who might be listening. What are some of those linkages that we might not be seeing between caring for the environment and, say, having a good job or getting good education or having good health? How do those fit together for you in some ways?
Yeah, one of the things that we've developed at PUSH is we've called it in the recent week or two the Climate Change Connection Circle, really tying in all the efforts that we already see around Buffalo and seeing that through a climate change and or environmental injustice perspective. So I was just detailing this to somebody. So we see health there, we see policing, we see education, we see job insecurity, we see food and water standards, we see air quality, we see transportation, housing, refugees and immigrants' rights. All of these issues are issues that a lot of nonprofits throughout the city of Buffalo are tackling individually.
Yeah.
And whether it's PUSH tackling housing and PUSH tackling weatherization, energy and land use, or whether it's MAP, Massachusetts Avenue Project, doing food and water. These are all issues that are interconnected, and in my brain, I see that all falling in through this circle of a grander picture. If you've ever seen the Just Transition Framework, which I'm sure that you have those two circles. One is the good one is the bad one, the middle part of like how do we get to the good. And I always think like when I first figured out, or when I first was explained the Just Transition Framework and it made sense to me as to like all the lived experiences, it was just mind-boggling to me. It was just like, oh, this is the grand equation that we've never been exposed to. This is how it all comes together, at least in the extractive economy. And with those 5 pillars of governance.
And one thing I love about your work at PUSH is that you are really bringing that positive vision to life in a very specific place on the west side in your green development zone. So if people want to know what does the future look like, what is this more fair, more sustainable economy, there's a place you can walk around and see it. On the west side, you can see green affordable housing, weatherized housing. You can see an urban farm where youth are learning skills, the Massachusetts Avenue Project. You can see the rain gardens that are helping keep our waterways clean. It's right there. You can walk around. You can see it. You can ask questions about it. Tell me about what that's meant for some of the PUSH members who live in that neighborhood. What difference does it make in ordinary life to have your house weatherized or to live in affordable housing that's also environmentally friendly and healthy? Talk to me about some of those experiences.
I mean, it makes all the difference. It makes a huge difference. There's countless community members that have been affected by the services that we provide, but unfortunately we can't provide it to everyone. We're just not there yet. That's the goal. But even thinking about Luz Velez, who's a prominent community member who always shows up to PUSH events, is always rocking out for us, and she like many other community members came in before my time, but when I first met her, there was always a lot of respect for her. Wherever I went and wherever Lucy was, there was just that respect. And I knew that she was sick. I just didn't know until I actually got to talking with her. And I don't want to tell her story, but just the general gist of her story. She bought a home when she got here. Shortly after she got here in the 80s. She bought a home. It wasn't in great condition, obviously, because Buffalo has the second oldest housing stock in the nation. But she figured, it's my own place. I can call it my own. I don't have to continue paying rent. And the fact of the matter is, within some time, her ceiling, her roof, within the inside was completely black mold, which definitely reflected in her health. She had a lot of respiratory issues along with other illnesses. And right now, she's alive, but she's not supposed to be alive. Her doctor told her she was supposed to have died at least a year and a half ago. And to think that we were able to catch that, she heard another community member on the radio one time, and she called in. Then our community organizer, Brenda Miller, went knocking on her door, and then that's how the process got started. We were able to secure over $40,000 of money for rehabilitating her home. And if you see even pictures, you can see on YouTube, look for PUSH Buffalo Luz Velez. You can see pictures of that black mold. You can see, if you see those pictures, they'll give you chills, and you start wondering, how can the person live in that condition. And you'll see also her testimony as to like, it was my own place. She was scared that they were going to kick her out if they saw the condition it was in. Where would she have lived if she was already on a fixed income? And this is her only place to be called home. She had a child. So it makes such a big difference because now we're able to have Luz for more than her life expectancy, more than the doctors told her. She will energize anybody in the room. She's always in pain, but she'll never let you know. And she always carries so many bags with her because she needs them. She needs all her medications because I would say she takes about maybe 20 different medications, and that's the reality that she lives in because of the circumstances in her environment. So for her to be able to live at ease in the sense of her home being weatherized and her home not making her sick anymore, I think that makes all the difference.
So often we talk about not just green homes, but green and healthy homes, because the two go hand in hand. A weatherized house that's tight, it's keeping out the cold air and keeping your heating bill low, but it's also keeping the water out and preventing things like mold, which afflict so many houses in Buffalo. So that's a great example. We're talking with Geovaira Hernandez from Push Buffalo about the upcoming event at Canalside called Rise for Climate, Jobs, and Justice. It's going to be September 8th at Canalside, and we're digging in to find out a little more about what climate justice looks like for Geo and for Push and for Buffalo as a whole. So we were talking about the Green Development Zone, and you were saying, well, we're helping a lot of people there, but we can't help everyone. And that's why it seems to me that the policy work that you do is so important, that you're building housing, you're rehabbing housing, you're making rain gardens, but then you're also fighting for laws and policies that are going to help everyone live live better in Buffalo and around the state. And I know that one of the big efforts is to pass state climate justice legislation, the Community Climate Protection Act, that you and others have been working on for a couple of years now. Tell us a little bit about what that legislation would do and how that would get at some of these issues that we're talking about today.
Yeah, definitely. So the Community and Climate Protection Act would basically provide standards for sustainability efforts. So thinking about if we're going 100% renewable, which is the way to go and the only way to go, to do it in a just and equitable way, not just driven by profits. So providing that for people so that it's equitable to everybody. So that those who are less fortunate, those who don't have enough money to put a down payment of $5,000 to have solar on their house can actually have solar, can actually benefit from renewable energy that comes, technically the energy comes in free, it's just the equipment that we need, right? But it provides those standards. It actually has goals implemented in them as to how much where we're going to be in terms of renewable energy. It also provides goals as to like the reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. It also provides, well, that would be the other policy in New York Renews, which is the CCIA, Community and Climate Investment Act, provides a polluter fee so that big corporations that are polluting could pay a minimal tax fee of $35 a ton. That's 2,000 pounds, just to be clear for the audience. $35, which would give us a revenue of $7.1 billion a year, just for the state, to be able to fund these just transitions all over the state. The reality is that we have a lot of local elected officials and statewide officials that claim to be champions of the people, claim to be doing a lot, but the funding isn't there, the support isn't there, isn't backed up. And so they're claiming themselves to be these great leaders, but in reality, that's just a front. And so we actually need legislation, and we actually need elected officials that are for the people, that are the people. Not even only for the people. We want people that are in positions of power to be people from our communities.
So this legislation has been introduced a couple of years now. I believe it passed the Assembly in the last 2 years, is that right?
Yes, it has. Yeah, but then it's just been stagnated there for a while. We've actually been meaning to meet with Senator Jacobs, and we do have a meeting with him this week just to talk more about it. We met with his chief of staff, and we relayed a lot of information. Obviously didn't get much back, which stems to the problem. Like, we can't even meet with our elected officials. Granted, they have very busy schedules, but the fact that it would take 2 to 3 months to schedule something with a person that's supposed to be representing your district calls to the attention as to like why are you not being available, or why are you not putting yourself available to the people that have elected you into the position that you are in.
So the two bills that you were describing would set strict goals for reducing greenhouse gas emissions in New York State, transitioning to totally renewable energy. They would impose a fee on the big polluters that are creating the greenhouse gas emissions and use that money to fund clean, renewable energy.
Yes, and create many green jobs.
And the legislation has some real specific standards, if I remember right, about those jobs to make sure they're good jobs, because just to say a job is green doesn't mean that it actually pays a living wage. You could be a sorter at a recycling plant and not be making a lot of money for a dirty, dangerous job. So just that label green doesn't tell you enough. It's got to be a high quality job that pays enough to support a family on as well.
Yeah, and I think the term green has now been taken on as this very popular term of, if you're a developer, if you're an agency, if you're anything that holds any power over people, and let's see, a utility office or utility agency or anything, you just put that word green in there, and then you kind of brainwash everybody that you're servicing with, oh, this is great, this is good for the environment, this is natural, this is green. But the reality is that it's not. It's natural, but it's not natural what it does to us.
So you've had some success at Push in creating quality green jobs, both in weatherizing houses, creating new affordable housing, and also in the landscaping work that we talked briefly about that creates rain gardens and other techniques to keep stormwater out of the sewer system where it leads to sewage overflows. And folks who like to swim in the public beaches around here know that they get closed every time it rains in the summer because raw sewage ends up in the lake and then it's not safe to swim there. So
even if you say that more than once, it sounds outrageous.
Yeah.
Like when I first heard that, I had to really think about it and really process that, because it just sounds unreal. It sounds like something that you would see or hear.
Right. We don't really put raw sewage in our water, do we? Yeah, 50 times a year or so we do.
Well, no wonder why our water actually tastes weird, regardless of what the report says.
So tell us a little bit about that work in making the rain gardens and how you've been able to hire people from the community to do that work.
Yeah, so I'll touch base. I definitely don't want to speak for the people that actually had this work, but I'll definitely touch some base. So we have the hiring hall where we actually train individuals from the community. We get them OSHA certified, and we actually get them through the funnel of like working with us and with other agencies or other development companies. We actually had 6 of our men that went through the hiring hall be employed by Montante Solar, which is a big developer here in Buffalo. They contracted those 6 men of color, and some of them were ex-convicts, to work on the Buffalo Public Schools solar program. 20 Buffalo Public Schools were to get solar, and they actually worked on that, making privilege wage of $50 an hour.
50?
Yes.
5 out.
Yes.
Fantastic.
$50 an hour. So and when we talk to them, because a lot of the times we get tours from people coming out of town, and we actually like to talk to them and see their perspective. Like I said, I don't want to talk for anybody, but this is just from what they've said. Like, it's given them a new perspective on what renewable energy is, what is actually attainable in communities if you do a collective round of what do we want, where do we want it, because we know what we want where we live. We know what we need where we live.
Yeah.
Even thinking about rain gardens, I never had heard the term of rain garden.
Yeah.
If you would have asked me this while I was a little girl, I would like, it's a garden, and if it rains, you know, it collects the water. But a rain garden is systemically placed so that it's about 6 feet under, dug out. There's rocks in place. There's actual native plants native to this region placed in there, but it's also leveled a little lower than the actual ground, just so that when it does rain, that water that trickles down is collected to that rain garden and it actually waters the plants that are native. A lot of the times we saw that we would have gardens, and the plants wouldn't survive just because of that. They're not native to
Not
this.
from around here.
Yeah, and we also do, like Push has 2 community gardens where we do like rainwater collection from the houses next door. That was actually illegal. And it still is illegal, I believe, in either California or Florida to collect rainwater.
Wow. So you mentioned solar and you mentioned schools, and that makes me think we should mention your new School 77 building.
Yes.
Just finished renovating it and moved into it, right? So tell us a little bit about that project and the solar piece of that project.
Yeah, definitely. So School 77, located at 429 Plymouth Avenue on the west side, is a renovated school. It used to be an abandoned school for many years, an abandoned elementary school, and it's a city-owned school, so they wanted really to demolish the building. And Push got word of this, basically did a quick canvas petition about this size, went around the community, collected about 500 in the first round, then 700 petitions asking the community, do you want this building to be demolished, or do you want this to be turned into something for the community? Obviously, they responded, we want this to be something for the community. And so each classroom on the 2nd and 3rd floor was turned into an apartment, 1 to 2 bedrooms, and it's affordable housing. So this means a 1-bedroom is $275, and a 2-bedroom is $560. So to think that you won't find that in the city of Buffalo anywhere. Sure. You could find that maybe for a room, if you rent out a room. But what's even greater is that we left a lot of the infrastructure the same. So we have the gym, that's what was originally there. We have that open for the community. We're housing 3 nonprofits, including ourselves. So Push Buffalo's there, Piece of the City, and Ujima Theater and Company are there. So it'll actually be an intergenerational thing, because the apartments are only for senior citizens age 55 and up, and then all the organizations that are down in the main floor are centering youth involvement, and so that intergenerational connection I'm really looking forward to. But what's even better about this building, it gets better, is that it's the first of the state, 100% low-income renewable energy, and it's community shared, community owned. So that means that we own it, we're actually able to put a price on it, and we're actually able to give that back to the residents so that their utility bills are lower.
So that now has community-owned solar as part of the renovation.
First of the state.
Very exciting. So that's the kind of thing that will be featured at the Rise for Climate, Jobs, and Justice event. Geo, we're running out of time, so give folks the 1-minute pitch for why they should come down to Canal Side on September 8th.
Everyone should come down to Canal Side because it is a free experience to connect with other individuals that have either been thinking about climate change, environmental racism, or just curious. If we think about Buffalo's post-industrial life, as well as the large population of refugees and immigrants and Puerto Ricans that are housed here, and to think of Puerto Rico in its state where it's at 1 year after Hurricane Maria, and how so much devastation still lives there. So this is an opportunity to celebrate where we are, but also adhere to where we need to go and where we need to be, and how do we hold our elected officials accountable.
All right, it's Rise for Climate, Jobs, and Justice, September 8th at Canal Side. Hope you can all visit that, and I want to thank Geovaira Hernandez from Push Buffalo. She's the energy organizer there, for being on The Public Good today. Next week on The Public Good, we will be talking about policing in the city of Buffalo. It's The Public Good every Tuesday at 7 p.m. on Power 96.5 FM and Mix 1080 AM, and every Tuesday at 1 p.m. on Facebook Live. Thank you.
Thank you.